what does it look like when a GPU doesn't have enough VRAM? As you can see, it's basically frozen, and this is going to be at 4K, so we're really pushing this GPU, but it runs out of VRAM even at 1440p. So that's an even bigger warning for buyers of 8GB GPUs in 2023. You can see up here, VRAM usage 137%. Insufficient VRAM for the chosen settings. The GPU is absolutely dead. Look at this, 4 FPS. Basically frozen, like it doesn't even work. It's like even a bad picture mode. So that shows you what VRAM does. I'm sure if it wasn't for the VRAM limitation, you'd be getting a little bit better performance. So here we have a 3060 Ti, 8GB GPU. What happens when we push the VRAM a little bit too much? Right now I have it on Ultra, and you can see there's no, resolution scaling going on. We have it at 1440p. So let's start up the game. If you were a gamer and you had this system has a 7800X3D, so it's a very good CPU, probably the fastest you can use right now, so there's no bottleneck. Let's see what type of performance on Ultra you can expect at 1440p. As we can see, we're getting over 60 FPS, and yeah, the game looks fine. Of course, it doesn't look like Overdrive or something like that on a 4090, but this is pretty playable. If you take a look at the GPU memory, allocation is under 8GB, and we're using under 6GB of VRAM. So far, so good. We're staying around 60. Pretty populated area here. The lighting doesn't look unbelievably good, of course, but it's pretty playable overall. All right, so let's see what VRAM limitation does to a GPU. Let's start off a little easy. Let's just put it at 4K. Change the resolution. We're going to leave it on Ultra. Make sure that any type of upscaler is off. So we're getting under 30 FPS, but this is a 3060 Ti, of course, and we are playing on Ultra. What happens now if we turn on ray tracing? Ray tracing Ultra, let's turn off any type of upscaler, of course. 2 FPS. Let's give it a second. Let's see if it's going to pop up a little bit. Nope, nothing changing. It's just basically one big picture. I can slowly pan around, but look at that, 3 FPS. And look at the VRAM allocation. It's trying to allocate over 8GB of VRAM. It's using almost 8 as well. It just can't use anymore. It's at the limit for this GPU. So ray tracing Ultra, this isn't even Overdrive at 4K. This is what it looks like when the GPU doesn't have enough VRAM. And of course, it doesn't have enough performance for this anyway, but the VRAM is definitely going to be one of the major bottlenecks that's going on now. Let's see if we dropped it down to maybe, I don't know, ray tracing low, if that makes a difference. And let's leave off look at that, around 18 FPS. At least now you can move around. Now, let's see what happens with these upscalers, DLSS. Let's put it back on ray tracing Ultra, and let's put it on DLSS balanced. Let's see what happens. So we go from around 3 FPS. Now we're doing like 28, 27. This is 4K ray tracing Ultra, but of course DLSS balanced. Obviously, if you were playing with these settings, I would definitely use DLSS. It makes it a much more playable experience. And then I'm sure you drop it down to like ray tracing low, you should be able to have a decent experience that's actually usable. But as we can see, the VRAM now is still pretty high, but it keeps it in check a little bit with DLSS. And obviously, the VRAM just gets absolutely completely run over if you try to use any other setting. So this is The Last of Us on PC. Not the best optimized game, but it did get a little bit better. As you can see, even when we have it on 1440p, look at that, it's giving us a little warning here that the VRAM usage is 117% over what the game really wants it to be. So you can see here 9474 over the available 8038. So everything here is first going to be on the highest settings. And you can see here the scaling mode, we're going to leave it on default. We'll try the DLSS later, but first we're going to leave it on default. And as you can see, the graphics settings, we have everything on Ultra. The graphics preset is on Ultra. So we're going to load it up. Let's see how the performance is at 1440p with a 3060 Ti. And remember, even at 1440p, 8GB of VRAM is no longer enough. So if you buy a 4060 Ti, you're going to be absolutely swamped with VRAM issues, even at 1440p with a lot of games coming out in the future. So the game is loaded up. So very stuttery. Look at this, it drops a lot. This is without any type of upscaling. The VRAM usage isn't quite as high. This is 1440p after all. But it's definitely not the smoothest experience, and you're getting some pretty low performance. Obviously, a GPU with better overall performance, not just VRAM, like a 4060 Ti should be able to do better. So the 3060 Ti is not only VRAM limited with 8 gigabytes, but it's also going to be a little bit, slower with the CUDA cores and everything like that. Whoop, getting caught by surprise here. Oh, come on, ooh. Already. Well, time for that. Oh no. This is embarrassing. Oh, come on. All right, so just make believe you didn't see that. What happens when we put on DLSS? How much better is our performance going to be? Let's put it on quality. So DLSS quality, now we're getting a little bit over 60 FPS. Doesn't look quite as sharp, of course. You do have that, upscaling going on, but it mostly looks fine, and it does play a lot smoother. You can see the frame time graph as well is considerably smoother. Now, what happens if we go to 4K? Let's leave DLSS on, of course, because, it's going to tank it. But look at our VRAM usage. With DLSS, it went down a decent amount. Now it's only 109% instead of 117. Let's put this at 4K. Let's see how far the 3060 Ti can go. So 4K DLSS on quality, you can see it's a lot more stuttery. We're dropping to 30, 20 FPS. Definitely not smooth at all. And this is with the DLSS on quality. Definitely much worse result in 1440p as expected. What happens if we turn off the upscaling? How bad is it going to be? Let's go here. Let's put it on default and let's see what happens. You can see up here, VRAM usage 137%, insufficient VRAM for the chosen settings. This may impact performance. Well, I don't think may is a good word. I think it's definitely going to. Look at that, using over 11 gigabytes of VRAM, we're allocating, and we only, of course, have 8,000. So let's see what happens. We can see 137% over. Let's see if I can get even back to the game. Everything has dropped. Look at that. 3 FPS. This is just like Cyberpunk. It's ridiculous. So this is just 4K on Ultra. It doesn't even have the ray tracing that Cyberpunk has. So as you can see, 4K Ultra absolutely makes the GPU unusable. Obviously with DLSS on quality, you can get around 30 FPS, which is a little better. But on default, the GPU is absolutely dead. Look at this, 4 FPS. Basically frozen, like it doesn't even work. It's like even a bad picture mode. So that shows you what VRAM does. I'm sure if it wasn't for the VRAM limitation, you'd be getting a little bit better performance, even though the GPU isn't quite up to the task at this resolution. The VRAM, I would say, is probably the biggest bottleneck. Look at that, 4 FPS, and that's not a picture. I'm actually moving. What happens when a GPU runs out of VRAM? This is an 8 gigabyte 3060 Ti, just like the 4060 Ti, which may have 8. What does it look like when a GPU doesn't have enough VRAM? As you can see, it's basically frozen, and this is going to be at 4K, so we're really pushing this GPU, but it runs out of VRAM even at 1440p. So that's an even bigger warning for buyers of 8 gigabyte GPUs in 2023. If you take a look here at the options, and look up there, look how far we are. Look at the VRAM usage, 137%. This game will absolutely fall apart with this GPU. And look, the VRAM it needs is over 11 gigabytes. So that means even 12 gigabyte GPUs getting pretty close to becoming up to that limit. In some games, you're going to be using a lot more than 12 gigabytes depending on your resolution. So 8 gigabytes is definitely dead. And this is how it looks like if you're playing an actual game. This is going to be Jedi Survivor, which has some infamous performance issues. So let's take a look at the settings that we have here. So you can see 3840 by 2160, everything on Epic. And yes, ray tracing is also on. We would normally do this with a 3060 Ti, of course, but we want to push it and see what happens. FSR on quality. Let's see what type of performance we're going to get. You can see we're staying in the 20 FPS range, 24, 25. So definitely not what I would consider playable. And this is an 8 gigabyte of VRAM GPU. And you can see the allocation is getting very close to that. Of course, this game will use a lot more if it's allowed to on a 4K resolution. So as you can see, that's pretty unplayable. So let's disable FSR and let's see what happens. Weirdly enough, look, the frames per second just went up. Now it's like 50, 40 something, 50 FPS.